So I'm actually here to talk about activating your developers through developer programs. Very exciting stuff. Nothing exciting about GitHub is going to happen this week for the rest of the week. Cool. And so yesterday this morning in the intro, we had everybody like raise their hands and who flew in. Who's not from San Francisco, flew in somewhere else, came in for this? That is awesome. Because I just want to be the first to welcome you to the Bay Area. Awesome. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is Beyonce. You guys all familiar with Beyonce? Cool, yeah. And I gave a version of this talk in China, so it was kind of challenging to talk about Beyonce in China, but she did perform there in 2015 once. But who's familiar with Beyonce? You guys fans? Any fans? Members of the Hive? All right, cool. So Beyonce got her start with Destiny's Child, right? Destiny's Child was like a legit group. I grew up on En Vogue. My mom was a big En Vogue fan. You guys probably never heard of them. Then we had like TLC, so like all these power groups. And then shortly after TLC came Destiny's Child, which is also Girls' Time, so it came out of like Houston. Super awesome group. They did a lot of great stuff. Unfortunately, their time ended. Sorry, I really messed up that pun, but I'll move on. And Beyonce actually grew out of that group. She became a superstar. She's doing very awesome stuff. You guys probably remember a lot of her songs. For whatever reason, the only song everybody remembers is All the Single Ladies, which is the only song I can't sing in karaoke, apparently, because it's way too fast. So if you guys want to choose a song for me, Hold Up probably is a better version. It's slower. Yeah, I'll do that one. So I'm here to talk about Beyonce and her superstardom. And it's actually a lot of what we're doing here as DevRel, because she's got what we like to call the Beehive. Anybody remember the Beehive? Part of the formation? All right, cool. So the Beehive it's an awesome group. It's a group of superfans of Beyonce. And superfans, these fan groups, super clubs, very popular in the 90s, actually through all of rock and roll in the 60s and stuff like that, the Beatles, everybody had this. And Beyonce's really, really tapped into her superfan group. So much that she has the Beehive, which makes a lot of sense because she is Queen Bee, right? That's how it works. So because she's Queen Bee, everybody's looking for her to have top-notch performance. So I highly recommend you guys just keep in mind the Beehive. I'm going to go on to talk about something that the second most favorite thing I like to talk about besides Beyonce, which is myself. So I am Brian Douglas. I'm BDougio on Twitter. Hit me up. I'm also BDougie on GitHub, as well as BDougio on GitHub. I had to snatch that one because the Twitter combination. Poor guy who has BDougie on Twitter always gets mentioned at me, so just leave him alone. He's a father of two, just likes playing video games. He doesn't want to hear about your Beyonce or Kanye puns, so yeah. So I'm a developer advocate. I got my start actually as a developer out in Florida, moved out here to the Bay, worked with a couple startups, worked at Netlify, this company, and then eventually transitioned to developer advocate because I was doing a lot of JavaScript, React stuff. I like talking, like speaking, like sharing what I was talking about. So it made it easy to talk about because Netlify is an awesome product, which you should definitely check out their space, which is in the after party. But since in the last 3 months, good timing, right? I joined GitHub, and now I'm just like cashing checks. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so now I'm at GitHub doing DevRel stuff. So I'm on part of a team of 2 developer advocates as well as soon to be 3 developer advocate interns. So it's an awesome program. Keep that in mind. And my job is to create superfans. So I am building my own hive. I'm building a bunch of fans of GitHub in a different way. Because as a developer advocate, our job is to build more developer advocates. Now, it sounds weird. Like, we're not hiring more developer advocates. We have a couple, and we're doing a really good job. But we need people excited about our product just as how we're excited about our product. My original intro to Netlify was actually I was a customer, and I was very excited about Netlify. I actually used their platform to share my blog and my content around JavaScript, and because of that, they hired me, and I became an engineer and eventually became an advocate. So, like, those are the stories we're looking to get. Like, the best, I think a few talks had this subject line where, like, you want someone who's excited about your product, but also in a position where they can talk about your product as well. So it's a skill set that not everybody has. Like, it's a very unique skill set, and it's a conference of, 200 plus here today of people who can do it. So keep that in mind as well. But if you want more developers using your product, you actually need more advocates. So this is like almost obvious. And the thing about this is because your advocates can actually help push your product. So like if you have bad news or you show up on Hacker News and less than happy light, which never happens for GitHub, then you need like the Hive to back you up, to show up in the Hacker News comments. So one thing that happened, anybody go to Coachella? Anybody go to Baychella? So the Beehive actually started as, I'm not sure if this is like Beyonce's, like her back room, like setting this up and saying, hey, Beehive, start this out. But any sort of member of the Beehive, when they mentioned Coachella on Twitter, it was called Baychella. And it became so big where I don't really watch Coachella. Like I'll catch like whatever shows up in my feed. But I watch Beyonce. And I knew when Beyonce was coming on because my feed, it was this slammed with Beyonce tweets about Baychella and when she was going to come on. And then the Russian stream that showed up after the actual recording, because like Coachella didn't have a recording that you could watch after the fact. I think it was on YouTube, but for whatever reason, this Russian stream showed up and everybody was just like on there. And because I follow people in the know, I was able to watch Queen Bee perform at Coachella without paying for a ticket. The other cool thing is that, as I mentioned on Hacker News, they go to bat for you. Like, if anything goes down with Beyonce, like when she had her twins, and people were like, oh man, no, she's kind of getting, thick, and she doesn't look like what she used to be when she was a Destiny Child. People go to bat for Beyonce, and they say, hey, this is not cool. Like, we'll take this somewhere else. Go talk about Kanye, about him gaining weight. Just kidding. So what I'm trying to get at is like super fans are literally your developer advocates. Like you need that, and that's what helps you get your job going. Like if I had to write every single example app, every single line of code to make this work, this product, or have to also provide all content around something that's happening, it makes my job a lot harder, and I don't have enough bandwidth to do all that as a solo dev advocate. So this is going to be like the outline I'm going to talk about. I'll move at a comfortable pace, so feel free to take notes. And I'm going to talk about product interactions, so these are really important. Talk about activating through education, which is very specific to GitHub, and then I'll talk about superfan empowerment. So let's just jump right into product interactions. Some interactions could be interactions through the CLI, the onboarding experience, the first touch of someone actually signing up to your product and getting their, either like if I saw some Twilio people here, your first text message sent from the API, first site deployed on Netlify, first pull request on GitHub, whatever it is, like find out whatever that metric is and find out how to make that metric the best. So I'll talk about, actually I deleted the slides, but Netlify, we were all about like deploying, how fast, how many seconds it took to deploy. And we made sure that deploy seconds was minimal at best, so that way we could keep that within the frame of people staying engaged. Because great experiences actually lead to great engagement, which is what I'm going to talk about in a moment. But these engagements are what people tweet about. Like if you went to a lot of these sites, marketing sites, you scroll below above the fold, you see all the tweets of people raving about the product and how much they love it. Like that's your campaign, that's your ad. At GitHub, we have a lot of engineers, and the culture of the company started with engineers went out and spoke, and they shared, and they blogged, and showed up on Hacker News. It got to the point where GitHub became bigger, and not everybody could do that. And when you get to the point where it's everybody's job to be a developer advocate, then it's no one's job. So then we had a point where they hired me 3 months ago to now focus more on that. So it's something you really need to think about as a company. Like if you have an engineering team and everybody's an advocate, who really is an advocate? Try to figure that out. And then if someone in your community is an advocate, it's probably time to start thinking about hiring that person or reaching out to see if you can contract them for content as well. Because I know bandwidth and money and runway is also realistic things to think about. So I'm going to talk about onboarding. It's the only product interaction I'll focus on. I think a lot of these are kind of, you can probably think about all the things, the problems of your product and think, how can we make this better, or how can we go to market to make sure we do advertisements or examples around a certain thing. But onboarding is really around, and I like it a lot because the company it came from, Netlify, and I think GitHub has another different onboarding experience, so it's unique as well. But onboarding is really there for helping users get started quickly. So if you've timed your interaction, I always use this example because I've been getting into like cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. So like when you get on like the exchanges, it takes like a week for you to know your customer and find out whether or not you're allowed to transact on the platform. That's like not a very great onboarding experience. I know they're trying to figure that out and deal with that. But if your onboarding experience takes that long, then you probably have something to think about and how to fix that. So help users get started quickly, because if it takes too long to use your product, then they're probably not going to use your product. So onboarding, 1 minute, 2 hours, 1 week. probably not so great. Try to see how you can go to bat and figure out how to serve your customer, which has been another theme today. This is me recording myself onboarding with Netlify with a new login. And I have a timer here. It's going to go up to around 21 seconds. I know it's very awkward. But this is like me. I already know how to like log in, so obviously I'm going through quickly through this. But imagine someone who's never logged in ever. Maybe times that by 4. So like we're still talking like around a minute to someone first deploying their first site to Netlify. And this was something that I went to every single example tutorial had a deploy to Netlify button. And this was intentional because I knew that the experience could happen within 30 seconds. So if you didn't know how to use our UI or click big old GitHub buttons and stuff like that, at least you can go through my tutorial and click this button and have a clone of the example I talked about. So something we took from other companies, like Heroku has their own deploy to Heroku button. It's already existence. Like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let's just see how we can get people using our product as quickly as possible. And again, the longer it takes to have your interaction with the product, it's probably less likely someone's actually going to use your product. So keep that in mind. But one other thing is like onboarding is not the only interaction that can happen. My first interaction with GitHub actually was not on GitHub. It was actually through trygithub.io, which was another company who did teaching code school, who was absorbed into Pluralsight. That was my first interaction to GitHub. So my interaction happened off platform. So you don't necessarily have to go directly to product and design to try to fix your onboarding flow or your interaction with features. You can also contract and partner with other companies like what GitHub did. As a developer advocate, you should also encourage better interactions. So you should probably, as was mentioned earlier, I forget which talk, is to show up at stand-ups, identify what's happening in the product, so you can go to bat to understand where are some key places you can actually improve your product. So one thing being GitHub operates everything, issues, pull requests, all operate in Markdown. Now, not everybody knows what Markdown is. Not everybody that's on the GitHub platform has done Markdown since the Daring Fireball blog has been out. So that's actually linked directly here. So inside of anywhere you have to write Markdown, that experience is enhanced by actually having a nice little note saying, hey, learn Markdown through this link. So this is a small little addition to improving the interaction with your product. So let's talk about bad interactions. There's also a lot of opportunity to improve your product through bad interactions. So by just simply listening. Who's familiar with the Dare GitHub letter? Is that something, a handful of us that either worked at GitHub or used to work at GitHub? All right, so this is something that I remember in Hacker News that came out. I didn't think of it as a big deal, but GitHub took it as a big deal. So a lot of open source contributors and maintainers got together and put all their grievances, very similar to like Martin Luther for like the church and stuff like that, and just wrote them onto a README, and then put it up there, and then it got on Hacker News on the front page. And this is something that we could literally just run away from. So who's going to look at all these like random JavaScript developers that don't like how issues work? But this has actually been fueling all changes on the GitHub platform, has been coming from this list. And GitHub actually took it internally. They actually had a response about a week later, so it took it a long time. But they had a response and said, hey, we're listening. We will do something about this. When you have bad interactions, you want to think, what would Bay do? And what she would do is go to bat for the Hive. So for developer marketing in GitHub, we have this like pattern where we actually call it Scoop. And Scoop actually outlines these concepts we can get here. I'll tweet out my slides after, so if you guys actually want to get this, I do have to kind of rush through some of this. So there is a talk that John gave at DevXCon Tokyo that's all about Scoop, and he outlines how Scoop was sort of identified. So they had a lot of support requests around students who wanted to use GitHub and have access to certain things. So what they did is they created content around that experience, and that content grew into more content, which is, so this is a student developer pack, so we give a lot of free stuff away just for college students. That turned into Classroom, which is an education platform to teach college students how to use GitHub and other things around GitHub. That content also turned into Outreach, so we were able to go out in the field and talk at conferences and meetups and share that content. Joe Nash, who's sitting in the second row, did a talk last year at London talking about scaling your program, and that's what scaling looks like. So we have representation of student developers all around the country at colleges that we can activate and say, hey, we have a new feature, we have something new, teach somebody about GitHub, and we now can build the Hive sideways, which is great. So we took this and we actually made an operation of it, which is GitHub education. So you've got education.github.com. We can get everybody who's a student free access to GitHub, but also training material to then qualify them and then send them out and become eventually campus experts. This actually could be summarized into 1 million users. So GitHub just was mentioned yesterday, we're about 28 million users. So 1 million of that is just the education program. So that's a big deal. So there's a lot of people internally looking at this program and externally looking at this program. So it's a really good way to onboard extremely brand new developers. Now, I'm not on the education platform. I actually focus around ecosystem. So my focus is all developer.github.com. So my goal is actually to engage the developer community to make sure they have all the tools for API and ecosystem to deploy integrations on GitHub. We also, in addition to that, we have another intro to onboarding their experience in GitHub, where we now no longer use Code School, but we'll use lab.github.com for in-browser experience of learning GitHub and their tools. So this is the GitHub letter, what I was talking about. One thing that came out of this is also we built new features, but we can't build every single features because when life gets you lemons, make lemonade. So we took that, and we're actually going to market to build a GitHub developer program to actually enable developers like yourselves and developers like your team to build improvements on the GitHub platform. So years ago, GitHub did not want to do something like this because we thought GitHub was perfect, so why would we want to fix it? But then we realized with the Dear GitHub letter that it wasn't perfect, and that there were a lot of developers that can improve GitHub. So now we have the idea of GitHub apps. Meteor, Apollo, they built an Apollobot, which actually enables GitHub's ecosystem to enable open source contributors to add their own labels to issues. So previously you had to be an admin to add your label to an issue or a collaborator. Now with the Apollobot, you can do it through a bot. And definitely check out that blog post and find more details. Real quick, just kind of land in this plane. One other thing is the work in progress bar. So if you type in WIP to your label, you could actually block a merge from happening, and the bot will actually activate and block that branch. So that's a feature that's kind of hidden within the branch tab, but there's an actual, so one of the main developers for OctoKit and also Hoodie, he's created this bot, and he's just adding enhancements to the GitHub platform. And now he has this eventually on Marketplace we'll start talking about. So this is the GitHub developer program. I'm looking to find more developers to help improve GitHub, and I'm looking to talk to people, so we have a survey coming out really soon. I want to hear what are some improvements that could happen to GitHub besides being bought by Microsoft. GitHub Marketplace, this is like the end goal. If you have a product that should go to market or should be like sort of like a Travis or a Circle or any other company, like we're giving you a path to it because we want to build proteges and people on the platforms very similar to Beyonce. And if you guys didn't know, Beyonce has a protege platform to encourage Beehive members to become the next Beyonce. And with that being said, we have campus experts, which one of them is walking out of the room, and he looks like this. And they're here as developer advocate interns that we literally took from that campus expert program, and we just lift them out, and now we pay them a salary to now do all of our work for us. So it's a really good recruiting tactic. It's a really good program. You should definitely check it out. If you have any questions, you can find me because I'm here to build more advocates, so let me know. Developer.github.com, and I'm B. Dougie Yo.